He is now, what's it called? Peeps.
Peeps eyeglass cleaner.
Peeps,
Get it?
Ding.
Comfortable, so you can do everything better. Trade up.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
Sorry I was late. I was getting my foot injected and I just got done.
Well, you weren't late. You were perfectly on time because it's time to start. So.
Oh, okay, perfect. I'll mute my phone, but I'm online. I'm driving, but I'm listening in. Sorry.
Okay.
Thanks.
We have a presentation for you all today, talking about alternative education and our special education and local disability Tier 3 program proposal. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the history portion. When we're looking at our program structure across the district, we have really done some marrying of alternative education and special education for emotional disabilities. There's some reasons for that. We see a lot of similarities for students. Sometimes there's just different eligibility criteria. Probably one of the larger is we get about $600 full-time equivalent for an alternative education student a year, and we get about $9,000 additional dollars for a student with full-time emotional disability. So marrying those programs and working them together allows us to provide some good student services. When we look across the district, when we look at that Tier 1 structure, about 80% of our students fit into that green area, where most of their services are delivered in the general education setting. When we talk about their multi-tiered services and support, those really occur at that general education classroom level. Most of the interventions that happen for them happen in the local classroom. Some students, about 15%, 15 to 18%, need something just a little bit extra. And that's often we hear folks talk about that multi-tiered systems to support Tier 2. There's gaps, maybe in learning, gaps in learning for behavior or academics. There's a need to catch up on some learning in some areas that we tend to do in groups, and do in groups inside of the general education building, build skills, and then continue on. Very few students need Tier 3. When we're looking at students who need Tier 3 services, those students really have a high need for social emotional learning, trauma-informed care. These are kids who need direct, one-on-one planning, and the staff needs lots of additional training to be able to support them. Our philosophy, as I shared just a minute ago, has been really how are we working, especially K-8, with those alternative education and special education students who really are showing some of those behavioral challenges, some of those complex needs. How can we work together to provide those services? We've added a real focus on mental health services, and we know for those students to be able to access the academic side of the instruction, they really need support in social emotional learning. We need to understand trauma-informed care. Our middle schools have access to Tier 3 at the current Bristol site, as well as their own site. And at the elementary school level, our Tier 3 services really are focused a lot at Basher, our program at Bristol. So I want to say Basher, but it's our program at Bristol.
Okay, so currently, our Tier 3 programs are spread out in the district. We have the elementary academy that's at Moran, and we have the emotional disability students at Eastwood, Beezer, and Hawthorne. And then we have the Basher program. So we have services for K through 8 spread out. And the idea is to make sure that we streamline and consolidate this program so that we can maximize the talent and the services for students. So this is a breakdown. That's the previous is a breakdown of where these students are. And also the last column is where the staff is.
Personally, how many total students are we talking about?
Okay, so we're talking about a total of about 45 spread out in different areas.
But you have 35 down there in the
But
back.
Basher, we're down to like about 17.
Okay.
So And we anticipate, we know the students that will be transitioning back, but we anticipate, about 40, a maximum of about 40 students. Okay. So, our current program challenges is that we have resources spread thin. They're everywhere, and we can't get information, standardized information to everyone at the same time or at, the right time. And it's difficult communicating with staff because they're in 5 different locations. They're under 5 different administrators. And so you deal with leadership philosophies and things like that that's different when it comes to servicing Tier 3. And remember, Tier 3 of kids that have the most emotional needs. And some of them are very sharp, academically. Not all students have equal access to curriculum. When we talk about a guaranteed and viable curriculum, that's one of the main things that we want to make sure that these students have. And collaboration is hard. We talk about professional learning communities, which is vital when you're talking about the specific needs of these students. It's hard to do that when you're in 5 different places. If we consolidate and bring to one place, then we can coordinate and we can collaborate more effectively. Okay.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Brander, and I'm Supervisor of Special Programs. I don't know that I've seen or met many of you before. So our proposed programming, which would start with the next school year, would be to collapse all of our programming into one single program that is run by Elkhart Community Schools. Currently, we have a contract with Basher, and then we have 4 of our own programs that are spread throughout the district. This would be one program to provide services to 40 students at Tier 3 level. It would be staffed with 4 general education teachers, 2 special ed teachers, and 1 transition behavior teacher, with one of the main goals of this program being transitioning students back to their home schools, assessing the skill level that they need, what sort of additional instruction do they need in managing emotions, coping strategies, things like that, and then building a transition plan from there. Additional staff would include 4 technical assistants, 1 social worker to provide mental health resources, 1 building administrator, and 1 secretary. By combining the programming and keeping it under the Elkhart Community Schools umbrella, the additional funding would allow us to also keep up our social emotional support at the middle school level. So each of our middle schools has an alternative education and ED program that's housed there. Currently, the onus is on the schools to provide those mental health resources. This program proposal would allow us to staff each of those programs with an additional social worker.
How much money is on that one page right there, the cost?
I actually do have a funding slide.
Oh,
It breaks it down.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we did look at the core rationale, and the core rationale is based on our promise that all means all, that we will do our best to educate every student regardless of their social economic status or their complex social and emotional needs. And we know as educators that social emotional needs block their access to being able to get instruction. And so we do want to focus on a program that will give a great curriculum and help students stabilize emotion. And, so the Basher program was a good fit at the time because we needed a program that kept every child in school. There was a commitment never to expel a child. And Basher helped us to do that. And in the meantime, we got our staff trained. And the continuous training in social emotional, continuous training in trauma-informed, CPI, and things like PSYOP, which is language. That continuous training helps our staff be more fortified to be able to do this. And we are able to do it as a district as opposed to contracting it out. And that's not anything against Basher because they were very effective in doing what we needed in terms of keeping students in school. We just want to, at this point, make sure that we're delivering a guaranteed and viable curriculum and that we are doing it with a staff that is on track with all of our pillars and with our promise. The decrease in cost, if we consolidate the best instructional talent together and we provide training and we provide the resources, we have an opportunity to save some and while improving programming for students. And so our core rationale is behind keeping the students first and making sure that we match talent to the needs of our student population. Yeah, they're making me sing a lot. So, additional programming benefits, we've listed them here. Our core rationale, all of this is a part of that. Trauma-informed training, trust-based relational intervention. We're leaning towards a restorative justice where students become a part of correcting themselves and a part of not just a punishment, but a part of development, because we're teaching students to just do better. Students will have the opportunity to participate in ESOs. We've started to develop those relationships for these students. Students will also, the main thing, have access to high quality instruction and all of the resources that we've adopted as a district. And also, the proposed changes will help us to do better for our middle school alternative program, because we know that we're dealing with not the cognitive domain, but what's called the affective domain, which is directly related to emotion, which will stop the most brilliant person from doing the most brilliant things. So being able to add social workers will help with that mental wellness.
Okay. So this is the funding slide that I was speaking about. On the left, you'll see current program funding. So this is what we currently spend on our dispersed programming. That would be our bachelor contract, our 3 self-contained ED classrooms, and our Elkhart Elementary Academy, which is our alternative education for students K through 6. On the right, you'll see the proposed program funding, which is an estimate. And these both funding calculations do include salary and benefits.
Yeah, with $64,000 savings, what is your plan for that?
That is a question that I am.
Most of those, so there's a mixture of funding. There's special education dollars, but those really are targeted towards our maintenance of effort, which means they come out of regular fund. So the savings would be general fund dollars.
Okay. And how many rooms in Bristol are we using?
I have a slide for that.
Oh, there we go.
Yep, there's our
I'm glad my math was almost correct.
I was very impressed. So this is where our current Basher Elkhart program, it exists within this space. In order to combine this program, we would not need to increase or add classrooms or anything like that. We have the current space, and it does have its own independent entrance.
That was the preschool.
Was a preschool, and then Basher has been using that for the past 2 years now to run an alternative school already there.
So that is that little hallway
Correct.
that comes, that separates it off, so it's secure from that?
It is.
Okay, and separate, like entrance, driving, busing, everything for that area? Okay, excellent.
So I think one of the things as we think about and look at that, these students are already here. Most of this, we had almost 40 students at one point, 35 students, for the availability for 35 students. So by doing this, we're really not changing anything except we're taking ownership. The Basher contract itself included an administrator. They were required to have an on-site administrator. They were required to have teaching staff. They were required to have a counselor. So by adding all those together, we're actually producing about the same. We're increased by about 5 students.
And this doesn't take away from, like, Bristol's numbers are slightly down, but even if once Bristol's number of students increase, these classrooms would have never been used for general education anyways, correct?
It's tough for me to say never, but right now they were before.
But it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's been a very long
Yeah.
time since it's happened. And then adding an administrator doesn't do anything to Martha and Tim. This actually ends up running as its own separate entity, so it doesn't put any stress on them as administrators, and they're able to run their schools, and this functions almost as its own school with an administrator.
That's what it is, a school within a school.
Yeah, so like the original thought of the presentation of delivering it to Bristol was probably overwhelming to them, but then when they saw the plan of action, it was probably a sigh of relief that's happening.
I think that we could all three say that was pretty much the, reaction when we spoke with Martha, was the side.
Sigh of relief, excellent. Well,
And again, I think it's important to point out that an administrator has already been there and on site, we paid it through the contract, we take ownership of whoever we decide.
well, and by doing this, now we're handling the issue of wanting social workers at the addition of social workers for junior high, which is important, correct? Okay, and then like my other thought on this is, like that takes out the students from Hawthorne and Eastwood and puts them there, which alleviates things for Eric, you know, and at Eastwood, so that they can kind of, is that right?
For the most part, yes. There are students who are considered, to be a part of the ED classroom programs there that spend more than 80% of their day in general education.
Okay,
So there would be a process of looking at students and seeing who would still need tier 3 and who does not need tier 3.
okay.
But yes, it would take the program out of those elementary schools.
Okay. And any concern that was there before on kids that were maybe like, and I'm saying this really gently because I don't want to be disrespectful to the student at all, but maybe those that have behavioral issues that were far too much for the staff to understand or really handle the right way, are those the students that kind of come over here into this program?
Yeah, so there's,
Okay,
you really have to rethink how you look at behavior to manage students with this level of need. And I think that is a very big challenge when, teachers and principals are trying to run full buildings with 400, 500 students.
awesome. Okay, sorry.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so do we have a slide about the transportation?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. So how much is this gonna cost in transportation? I would think that a large amount of that $64,000 is gonna be eaten up, because you're gonna be taking kids from all over our district and taking them out to Bristol, right?
So we're already doing that with, last year with 40 students. So when we talk to transportation, we already had 40 students from across the district attending at Bristol. So it will look mostly cost neutral. There will be the possibility with how we run things next year with busing in high school. It might create some challenges with the transportation. But we don't have to run on the same elementary or middle school time, so it allowed us to talk about changing the time that we start and changing the time we end.
Okay, good.
Okay, right.
That literally was it, and it was thank you for question, so,
I have a question, from a staffing perspective, wasn't it a reduction of like 6 pairs from the current program into the new?
Yeah, so, okay. So the current program structure that we have 2 technical assistants, which are, associated with the Elkhart Elementary Academy. And then we have 6 paras in our ED programming. That's because we have 3 separate classrooms, across the district for, students with emotional disability. If we're combining the staffing resources, we won't need as many bodies, because if you look at it now, each classroom will have 2 adults, a general education teacher and a technical assistant, and then each classroom will also have half of a special education teacher that will float back and forth, on top of a dedicated administrator and social worker. So the staffing need is not as great because we're not spread out. We're not trying to support 5 different programs. We have 1 program.
the other thing, if you notice, the change between the two, almost a wash between 6 and 4 employees. It's tough for us to get paraprofessionals, especially paraprofessionals that need this level of training. So when you get that level of training, you can be a technical assistant, which means you can pay that staff member a little bit more likely to get close.
That was my follow-up question.
Yeah.
And the paras that are a wash, they just move to a different position in the school, correct?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
if they qualify for technical assistant, but they're also, right now, we're not open, so there's some folks.
Okay. And do we have an administrator, or are we hiring an administrator?
We would have to look to hire an administrator.
Okay. Mhm.
any other contract.
Okay.
Now, would the administrator be are we looking for someone who can specially be for these students, has experience with these students, not just,
You know, I can speak to that because, you know, I came from Tipton, so you really do have to have a certain temperament and the knowledge with it. You know, because a lot of, knowing the best practices and let that inform your instincts. So you have to have someone that knows the science, you know, of dealing with special needs students. And you have to have someone that's got a temperament, you know, to make sure that, you know, teachers are trained properly and that the equity and consideration happens.
When you originally engaged with Basher, I know it kept every child in school and helped train the staff. Was this a long-term goal from the initial engagement with Basher to end up in a program like this where it was consolidated, or was this something that, as the program went along, you saw the efficiencies, what could be done?
So I have to say that Lindsey Brand is one of the most talented people in the district when it comes to dealing with the Tier 3. And so she really did initiate the thought process, the change, the paradigm shift from, you know, from an outside source being able to do it internally. And so when, you know, all the minds got together, we came up with it. So it wasn't something that was on, you know, the horizon. It really was, you know, we saw the opportunity because the best practices have been embraced,
Right.
our systems have been embraced, and it, you know, provides an opportunity that we could do this, you know,
Right.
ourselves.
Just from an HR perspective, we would not see, in this program really any decrease in anybody losing their current position. Everybody would keep a position within Elkhart Community School. Certain paraprofessionals, as Anthony had said, could get training, to become a TA. So all of those paraprofessionals have training in crisis prevention intervention, but then there's an additional layer to be the TA of that training, as well as some other training. So even though there are 6 positions across the district, HR would work with special ed, and we would make sure that everybody has a position across the district as we have openings for them. So nobody would lose that position.
Okay. Do you want to add anything?
I just, they came to me and said, this is what we're thinking, and what's kind of emerged by seeing what we could do a better job of for our students. And it seemed a general no-brainer to me that for us to be able to live up to our Elkhart promise of knowing every kid by name seems to make a whole lot of sense.
so does our contract with Basher end at the school year, so we don't have to worry about breaking a contract?
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anything else?
Yep. All right.
All you, Susan.
I just have a few housekeeping reminder things. You do have your new board books. For the most part, they are updated with the new information, but because we haven't voted or approved slate identifiers as President and Vice President aren't in there. Secondly, I want to remind everybody that the board retreat is coming up in February 25th and 26th, Thursday and Friday, just like before. Part of the strategic plan that we do this, so it's built into our calendar. Kind of need some feedback as to, like last year, Thursday was a full day, Friday was a partial day. Did that work? What you would like to have as a part of this training besides what is already slated, kind of generic. And if you wanted 2 full days, what do you want those 2 full days to cover? Signature books, my pet peeve. We try to sign it at board night. And not to make me happy, but because because frequently, especially for finance, there are documents in there that have, a due date or a submittal date, and we need to get them signed that night to move them on for further business. And then, last but not least, for my benefit, if you aren't going to be here or you're going to be virtual, please let me know, so I can have it set up and Ryan can know what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's a little more complicated, and right now, we're still good through the end of January, right? As long as we're under the executive order. And as always, anybody has any questions, I'm here.
And we need to get him set up so he is ready to do the signatures. So however that happens, because then that won't come to me any longer. He'll need to get those signed up. So they'll set you up with that, and then what'll happen is you'll get emails, it'll let you know. Huh?
After the.
Right.
Yes,
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 but,
there's a whole thing,
right,
yeah, of switching.
As long as it's not on a check.
No, they don't trust us.
No, it's never that.
Never that.
That's good.
Okay.
Anything else?
I'm good.
Mr. Thorne and Mr. Scott?
Mr. Dillon. How many people remember?
You know, I'm gonna call him and tell him you're making old guy comment.
Okay, so, we received an email with a number of questions from Mr. Weaver, and so we thought we'd address those, for the benefit of the full board. The first question that Doug posed, was about property tax credits. Those have actually been on the decline, because if you're raising roughly the same amount of money and your assessed valuation is going up, right, then your tax rate is going down. And so what's happened for all taxing units, not just Elkhart Schools, is that the impact of the tax caps, the 1%, 2%, 3%, has been shrinking. Since I've been here, it's been in a range between 3.6 and 3.9 million. It's been on the decline. So in 2020, the number that we're going to get is 3.4 million. So it's continued to shrink. That's been a good thing. When the last Great Recession hit, property values, assessed valuation in our district went down about 11%. And so we peaked at $6 million. That was $6 million coming away from capital projects that helps us take care of buildings. It came away from transportation and bus replacement. So that's where it really hits us. And since the state 2019 consolidated, remember all those funds, right? The part of the general fund and then CPF, transportation, bus replacement, all became one fund, operations. That's where it is. Okay, so the good news is it's been shrinking. It's still a big number. So if we project out $3.5 million over 7 years, this is $24.5 million. So over the course of the referendum that we're going to be seeking your authorization to for this resolution tonight, our tax cap loss over this coming period will be in that $25 to $28 million range. Okay. So I hope that gives some framework there. Another item on the agenda tonight is this issue about correcting the VIVA contributions. What we discovered when, once again, we're getting more demand from the state for reporting, so we started looking at VIVA and discovered we hadn't been doing it. And this is somewhat of a function of all the turnover, right? Everybody in the business department is started in 2016 or later, including me. And what all the newbies didn't know was in 2006, when the buyout happened for the teachers and administrators and this executive assistant group, it set a rate. And then the Great Recession hit, and they adjusted the rates down. And anybody that didn't participate in the buyout was to get, by board policy, a little bit higher rate. And so as we dug into this, and Doug dug through his records getting a contribution at the wrong rate, the rate will be corrected going forward. So that's what that's about. Going forward, and of course that number grew over time. So in 2020, that number was $18,700. And so that's what the annual impact is going to be, making this correction, but it stems from following policy from years ago. So that's what that relates to. Well, to put in perspective, the reason why there are two different rates, administrators like me, who were here in 2006, received a buyout at that point in time, part of the barn proceeds. Same thing with teachers. We received a lump sum net present value of what those retirement benefits were in 2006. So I and other administrators and teachers who were here in 2006 got a significant amount of money, depending upon years. I didn't get as much as some people because it's fairly early in my career here in the district, but got more money than Mr. Scott ever got in terms of deposits into those accounts. Hence the reason for me to have a smaller percentage contribution to the VIVA for me. Administrators who hired after that didn't get that buyout at all, which is why they have the higher rate. Things got muddy back in 2010 when, on Mr. Mao's recommendation, the board suspended 1.5% of all the VIVA contributions for all administrators. And at that point in time is where things kind of got a little bit off kilter, like because of that suspension. Because of the state funding cut, it was millions of dollars at that time. So, and at the same time, the teachers took a reduction in their contribution to the VIVA. Those were reinstated later on in 2011, and I think that was one of the things that really kind of made this whole thing, the wheels came off a little bit, probably the best way to describe it. So we're just really making whole those administrators hired post-2006 who were not getting the correct contribution. Third item was the cooperative agreement with Elkhart County. There is not a specific termination date in the agreement, but all we have to do is 30 days notice, the agreement goes away. And the agreement, in fact, replaces agreements that were negotiated by Dr. Woods with the county back in 2011. Those agreements had no sort of language in there that really provided any protection for the school district. They had no sort of language that talked about when the agreement would terminate, any of those types of things. So really it was an effort on our part and the county's part to bring those agreements up to kind of a current state in terms of what the expectations of those agreements were. Okay, moving on, the MOU regarding student loans. Yeah. A couple of things to point out. One is you see some really high numbers in there. I don't think we have any teacher who is per se being a class of 30, 61 students or more. Now you may have a teacher that has overloaded a number of classes that might stream into that level, but in general, we wouldn't see anybody specifically teaching at that particular level. This really is just a replication of the agreement that we brought to you in the fall for the first semester. The only significant change is recognizing the fact that our teachers at the Career Center, because of what's expected from the state, are providing in-person instruction 5 days a week, as opposed to a combination of either hybrid and e-learning or totally e-learning, totally virtual. Career Center teachers are carrying a much different load, and we wanted to make them whole for the first semester and bring that into place for the second semester. In terms of expenditures, probably, I think a rough estimate would be about $200,000 per semester. All of those monies are reimbursable under the CARES Act funding that we have received. So long term, it would not necessarily have any impact on the education fund. Okay. And, Mr. Weaver, you also asked about state reimbursing ECS for costs. It really is through these programs like the CARES program and the CARES grant. And so I think I mentioned this when we were going through the budget process. As I've been kind of holding the CARES money, right, to use it as we went through 2020, and we did okay. We were able to have got decent cash balances. I'll talk about that kind of we will be paying for teachers and things like overloads from the CARES money. We had 2.9 million was our allotment. Okay, so that's a large number. We have committed a piece of that to support headcount. We were required to share some of that money with non-public schools, about $100,000. But then for us, you consume the remainder of it. We're going to use that in this calendar year, 2021, to support teaching staff. So that instead of charging a high school teacher to the education fund, we're going to charge them to their pot of money. Now, some districts added additional teaching staff members. We know it's hard to recruit, right? So the route we've taken is our teachers have taken on more of a load. They've agreed to teach through their preps and deal with the students in front of them with hybrid students, or virtual students remotely. So we didn't hire folks up front. Okay. Then when we are successful with the referendum effort, those dollars will come in 2022. So it's really a cash flow perspective, right? Trying to preserve our financial position through 2021. We're going to support it with CARES dollars. Okay. Another question was, one thing I can circle back to, one of the questions that we had was the duration of our MOU with the Teachers Association. It really only has a life during this school year, and in essence expires with that payment in June. So there is no carryover of that all on this school year. And certainly, I for one, and I think everybody in this room, hopes that we are back to a traditional normal schedule for the 2021-2022 school year. And then I believe the final piece was where do we stand on spending? So for the calendar year 2020, we have spent, and this doesn't include dollars in transportation and food service. I didn't get a chance to pull those. We've spent about $1.7 million. So, and that included. Remember, in the spring, we were paying a pay differential for those required staff that had to come to work. It includes all those emergency benefit days for folks to stay home in the spring. And now, if they've been have a positive test or they're a close contact and we're asking them to stay home, we're paying emergency benefit days. And we're coding all that to the pandemic. One other item is we might get dollars. I don't expect to, from FEMA. Heard me talk about this before. We filed for roughly $600,000 for things, not people, right? The sprayers and all the disinfectants and hand sanitizers and the masks and all those things, and technology that Jason's group has led to try to provide access for students. We included those things in the claim. The feedback that we've been getting, including from the state school superintendent a couple months ago, was that FEMA has been kind of backing away because the number was so big nationwide. They had no concept of how big. If they have a hurricane, it's located in a state or two. But nationwide, FEMA claims came rolling in. I heard from a FEMA guy this week, and he was asking for some clarification numbers, but I'm not aware of any school districts anywhere close to us, other than New Prairie. I've heard got a small FEMA return, but one of the early filers was Goshen, and they've got nothing. No communication, no denial, but no money. And so we'll see where that goes. I got my fingers crossed, but my expectation is high that we will see dollars from FEMA to help. I think that kind of covered all the.
There was one under A. What are the educational results of doing this, of additional workload on these teachers? What are these kids, what are their test scores? What are their whatever, that you measure these by to say that this is effective. It's one thing to say that, okay, we got, this kind of money, we're going to pay this, but are we getting the education out there to these kids, with teachers having large groups of kids? And all this stuff right here, that's why we're here.
Right.
To educate kids.
Right. I think are we getting the same type of results we would get in a traditional year? I don't think anybody would say we're getting the same type of results. Are our teachers really, putting their greatest efforts in? I think the question to that is absolutely. And I think over the last several months, I guess what I would say is their skills in these areas continue to grow. So I think we're beginning to see more and more effective practices in these areas. The support that they've received from the education technology team, as well as the technology experts in the building, I think we're continuing to see improving results. For one of the interesting things that I hear a lot, which I know we'll never be able to do, is, boy, if we could go 4 days a week and have those Fridays available for professional development, professional learning communities, we could really be knocking out of the park. Now, I don't see any day where, given the current way the state funds us, current way the state calculates the number of hours in the classroom, we reach that point in time. But I do think we're starting to see more and more improved results from that. Can I quote to you test results? No, because really as a lawyer, I probably don't spend as much time as I probably should looking at test results, but there are a couple of people in this room who probably could speak better to that, and a couple of people on the screen behind you.
One of the things that it relates to also, Mr. Weaver, is the just staffing challenges. I mean, some of those numbers are high because we have few people licensed in particular areas. So I know one of the virtual teachers for family and consumer science is very high in numbers, and some of our other areas is because of potential shortages in classes. I know our middle school scheduling was really difficult because we were down some positions or those kind of things. So part of that is also just a function of being short-staffed or not having more people in some of the licensed areas. And then a reluctance to necessarily go out and hire staff to meet what we have right now when we wouldn't necessarily need those people beyond hopefully this year.
Thank you. Are there any other? We're about to say the same thing. Are there any other questions? Either Mr. Town or myself.
Okay, just to go back to the, let's see, where are his questions? The VBA account.
Yes.
You're saying that it will take $18,000 to catch everybody up this year and then we're done?
No.
No.
So the catch-up back to 2011 is just about $78,500. But that amount grew over time, right? As there was more administrators that were getting the wrong rate, that became administrators over time. So this most recent year, as a benchmark, was roughly $18,700. And so going forward, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 a year is going to be that difference year to year as we correct the rate.
Don't get mad at me when I ask this, but how did you guys let it get out of control to that degree? It was just that one muddy year, or did we lose, were we not paying attention?
I think a lot of it comes down to staff turnover.
Okay.
And it was really our current staff that discovered something that quite honestly happened under their predecessors. Now, a good thing, to some extent, is this money is really going to end up coming out of the bond proceeds that we still have from the original sale of bonds back in 2000.
Okay.
So it's not a drag on the education fund or the.
Well, that's kind of what I'm sitting here thinking, is how will that look if that turns out to be something that comes out of a fund that would not necessarily be benefiting our staff when we're talking about wanting to benefit our staff. So now with this mistake and being caught up and figuring it out, now from here, we know what we're watching for, so we would never get in the muddy water again.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, all right, excellent. And then my other question was, oh, back to the virtual teachers. So just a temporary stipend for them, right? Okay, how did that go over perhaps with some of the hybrid teachers that are trying to balance both sides of it? Because
that's another piece. That's a great question.
Watching our hybrid teachers work at the level that they're working and seeing, sitting next to one and watching them answer emails like crazy while trying to educate, people face to face in person? How did that go over? Because I think that's a lot.
Probably, the answer, this is a good lawyer answer, it depends on the teacher.
Okay.
I think some of the teachers have to be recognized, especially those who are carrying those significant loads. And of course, those significant loads could be hybrid teachers who are also teaching virtual students, or virtual student teachers who are also teaching hybrid students. I think they all recognize, I think there's a real recognition that we're asking people to do something they've never done before. Especially those teachers who are virtual teachers who might be carrying a really significant load of students. Although we wouldn't normally ask anybody to do that. Now, on the other hand, our high school teachers typically carry a load, a student load of about 115 students overall over the course of the day. So to some extent, it's not that far out of the realm of norm for them. But I think generally, people recognize that folks are carrying a load that is not normal. Now, does that make the hybrid teacher feel swell, knowing that their colleague might be getting more? Probably not. But I think the reality is, I think everybody knows that we're just doing our best.
Yeah.
This really is a good faith effort.
Right.
To try to be fair to everyone.
Yeah.
So,
just witnessing myself personally on how an elementary teacher per se that has students in the class, I can't get over how, and Carrie can speak to that, how many emails are coming during that day from the parents that are at home, or even the kids that are at home that are messaging their teachers saying, I can't get this assignment to work, can you send that assignment back to me, and to see them actually like right there face to face with their kids doing that double work is a lot, so.
Here's what I can tell you on hearing
Yeah.
district,
Uh-huh.
is they wish they were being treated as well as how our students are being treated by the administration. Now, will they remember that 6 months from now? Don't know. Let's certainly hope they do.
You can repeat that during the board, and we'll put that in a minute.
Oh, who knows?
Okay.
Our student association president might even mention that during the regular board meeting.
Okay.
She doesn't really like to speak during the work session.
Yeah. Okay, oh, good. Do you have other questions? Anything? You two did well together, Abbott and Costello, congratulations.
Laurel and Hardy.
Laurel and Hardy, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
what? Okay, that was another old guy comment. Oh, my gosh.
Oh, boy. Okay. What do you have next?
Just move to executive session.
Okay. All right, and so we shall. Thanks.
why, I don't even know why I asked him questions.
You haven't got it memorized.
Meeting called to order. Okay, so if everybody would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we will do the oath of office for our 3 members, 2 that have been re-elected and 1 that has been elected.
I expect you, well,
Please come up your feet.
I'm looking at you. Idea, but it's always right.
Are we looking at you or them?
Yeah.
You ready? I solemnly swear
That I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Indiana, and the laws of the United States and the State of Indiana. I will faithfully execute the duties of my office as a member of the governing body. So help me God.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, and now we switch our board around so that we all stay strong in our positions, work well together, and so in doing that, we switch our board every year. And so this year, we are going to switch, and our incoming president will be Rocky Enfield. Our incoming... Huh?
I haven't even been nominated yet.
Oh, wait, oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Oops, there we go.
Prior to that, I formally moved for the Rotation Officers and Board of School Trustees for Elkhart Community Schools for 2021. Rocky Enfield as president, Stacy Davis as vice president, and Sue Diver as secretary.
I would like to second that motion.
Okay, do you need to do a roll call for that? Okay, we'll roll call. We're going to do a roll call because we do have one of our board members that's virtual.
Okay.
Any discussion? Is there? For the vote. Yeah. Is there any discussion from anybody? Okay.
ready? Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Oling,
Aye.
Susan Diver,
Aye.
Stacy Davis, Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield, Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Fantastic. We need to note our conflicts of interest. Do I need to read those?
The 2,
Okay. So
who they are.
yeah, we have 2 conflicts of interest, due to having employees inside of the school system, and that is Rocky Enfield and Doug Weaver. Okay, fantastic. And then our resolution of the Board of School Trustees. Mr. Scott.
Yeah, so this is the standard resolution we get to do each year. It names the treasurer and the deputy treasurer, that our copy fee for records is 10 cents. This is the important one for tonight because this leads into the next little short meeting, is the officers and members of the Board of Finance shall be the same as the officers and members of the Board of School Trustees. It also sets the compensation for board members. As you recall, the board chose a couple of years ago to reduce that from $2,000 a year to $1,800 a year. That is listed in here. Cash management provider is Lake City Bank. We appoint Barnes and Thornburg as legal counsel. We use it for a variety of things. Elkhart Truth and Goshen News are our designated newspapers for advertisement of legal notices. There's a mileage rate, which is the IRS rate, by the way, adjusted each year. It went down this year. And then bond amounts for various positions within the district. So with that, I would ask for approval of this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion from the board? Okay.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Oling,
Aye.
Susan Diver,
Aye.
Stacy Davis,
Aye.
Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield,
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Okay. Ready? Okay, okay. I'm gonna adjourn this meeting. Then I'm going to call to order and reopen our next meeting, which is our Board of Finance annual meeting.
Yes, the first item on the agenda is adoption of the resolution as provided in the agenda there. It was resolved that the Board of Finance authorizes the treasurer of our schools to invest funds from depository balance, instead of a specific fund that was in accordance with previous provisions provided in the act.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion from the board? Okay.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Oling,
Aye.
Susan
Aye.
Diver,
Aye.
Stacy Davis, Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield,
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Okay.
Thank you. Next two items are just informational. The board is required to receive an investment record. As you can see, once again, there was no investment activity outside of the earnings we make from our banking services provider. We keep our money in a sweep, so those millions of dollars are in a sweep account with the bank. Earnings for 2020 was $193,628. The thing that's interesting is our services agreement with the bank actually ties to the federal funds rate. So it improved until the pandemic, and so the rate at the start of the year in January was 1.97%, almost 2%. So we were doing pretty good. And then when the pandemic hit, the Fed dropped their rate to the floor virtually. And so at the end of December, the interest earnings rate is 0.49. So, yeah, we're back in that kind of ugly time in terms of earnings on investment. The board also receives the Neola board policy 6144 that has information about investments. The new piece that started last year was that during this meeting, we have to share the fiscal indicators that the state developed. That was a new item, really coming from the financial problems that happened at Berry schools and then subsequent to that, Monkey schools. There's a distressed unit appeals board, and so when school districts in Indiana get in trouble, the distressed unit appeals board steps in, works with districts. Well, so now legislators, they don't want to have another Berry, and so they created fiscal indicators for all districts. The thing that happened this year, and you'll, for those of you that are followed last year as well, greatly reduced number of indicators because of that situation where we changed the number of funds, we eliminated the general fund, and we have the education fund and the operations fund. So now the indicators really focus on what's your enrollment doing over time, what your fund balances are doing, gives a little information by revenue type, and then they also have one in there now, what percentage of your total revenue picture comes from referendum. So as you can see from the charts and the materials, the things were improving for the district financially. We were doing better. So we hit the crazy pandemic, and then we've had to make additional challenging choices at times, as we described. So crucially important that the resolution that we're going to consider later in the meeting forward and that we are successful. So that concludes my comments about fiscal indicators. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to adjourn that meeting. Take a breath and prepare for our next meeting, which I will call to order, and we will begin again with, no, don't we do the pledge again? Just, you don't want to do that again? Okay, all right, Casey.
Elkhart promise, every student is known by name, founded and supported by highly effective staff, and in partnership with the community, to graduate career, college ready, and life ready.
Thank you. The invitation to speak protocol is a white paper that if it's not on the seat, you can receive from Mrs. Ott. What you will do with that is fill it out with your name and address. At the end of the meeting, you will be called up where you will have 3 minutes to speak. You will state your name, your address, and then begin to speak on your topic. Okay, next is our consent items, which are our minutes, claims, gift acceptance, fundraisers, extracurricular purchase requests, conference leave requests, personnel report.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I would like to share tonight that we are honored to receive 16 very generous donations totaling $97,033. Of these donations, $75,000 was for the ECI building fund. $12,150 has been accumulated from the fundraising that is out there right now for the Elkhart High School Music Department for their music apparel. $8,918 was for curriculum and athletic programs, and $965 to support families during the holidays. Live in a community where things are really tough right now, and to still have this kind of generosity. My heart is overwhelmed, Madam President.
Excellent. Amazing. We have a motion and a second, and any other discussion? Okay.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Evan Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
Kelly Mullins.
Aye. Okay, old business. Mr. Thorne.
Yes, number of board policies to be considered tonight. First board policy, we'd like to take a look at that, would be, revisions to, board policy 2266. This is our Title IX policy. As you might recall from reading, earlier last month, the, U.S. Department of Education has made significant changes to the regulations of Title IX. And those regulatory changes are causing us to have to, in essence, rewrite our Title IX policy that was presented to you during the meeting on December the 8th. And we are seeking your approval of that policy this evening.
Okay. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Okay.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Evan Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
Kelly Mullins.
Aye. Okay.
Next policy, again, is presented to you back on December the 8th, are proposed revisions to our policy, our accounting system for fixed assets, which is board policy 7455. In essence, this policy changes some of the thresholds of how we have to account for various different fixed assets, and this was resulting from guidance we received from both the State Board of Accounts as well as the Indiana Department of Education as to how we account for various fixed assets of the school corporation. Seeking your approval of those changes this evening.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Discussion from the board? Okay.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Evan Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
Kelly Mullins.
Aye.
Our next board policy this evening are proposed revisions to the Secretarial Business Compensation Plan. In essence, what we're requesting, and we are asking you to waive second reading, one would be to increase and reclassify the compensation taken on significant budgetary reporting responsibilities, both to the state and the federal government in terms of management of our special education funds. Of course, in addition to that, that department has now taken on the responsibility for overseeing our high ability program as well. So we're seeking approval of that reclassification of that particular position, and also really doing some cleanup in terms of title changes that have happened over the last couple of years. That quite honestly haven't been addressed as we've made changes to positions over the last few years. So we're seeking approval of that policy this evening, and that's due to wait next week.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion from the board. Okay.
Jeff Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield,
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Okay.
Our next policy change, again, we're asking you to wait a second to read on this, is board policy 3422.12F. This is the compensation plan for the appointed employees. As you recall, last year when we were approving compensation changes for employees in various different positions across the board, we were increasing the wage rate for our support staff by 30 cents an hour. Unfortunately, the rate that the district translator was receiving that range at that point in time would not have accommodated that, so we're seeking that change from a $29.65 top rate for that to a, other way around, $29.36 to $29.65. Again, that's the new wage that we need for that policy.
And so moved.
Motion.
Motion and a second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Discussion from the board.
This was last revised in November, right? And then
That's correct. And after that date, we possibly do changes, and actually the next policy very, very much follow the same pattern.
Everything else, right? Okay.
Jeff Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield,
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Okay.
Last policy, and again, I apologize for having so many policies, but that's this evening, it's that time of the year when we're doing cleanup on some of our compensation plans. Our revisions to board policy 3422.14F is the policy governing compensation for employees in technology services positions. Here again, we had wage ranges that needed to be adjusted so that these employees could receive a similar increase to other 12-month employees, 12-month salaried employees. So we're seeking approval of those changes this evening and asking the wage next week.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion from the board. Okay.
Jeff Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield,
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye.
Very much. Also have a memorandum of understanding for your approval of this evening. This is an agreement we've entered into with the Elkhart Teachers Association. It really addresses some of the challenges that Elkhart teachers have been experiencing this year in terms of really voluntarily, quite honestly, taking on the responsibility to teach in multiple different settings. We have teachers who are having a primary assignment in a hybrid, who are teaching virtual students. We also have virtual teachers who are teaching hybrid students. And we have career center teachers who are engaged in in-person instruction 5 days a week. We've worked out an agreement with the ECA that very much replicates what you approved last semester, but for the balance of this school year, recognizes the additional workload that our teachers are taking on to really provide a solid educational experience that we can in a unique environment for students attending Elkhart Community Schools, whether they be in a virtual environment, in-person environment, or a hybrid environment. I would note, after that conversation with folks who tell me that other school district teachers really are kind of jealous the way that we've been able to, with the school corporation, take care of our teachers. So I think that speaks well to the school board. If you're willing to make that, effort on behalf of our teachers. Additional expenditures are eligible expenditures to be reimbursed under the federal CARES grant. And we're seeking approval of these, this memorandum of agreement this evening.
Second?
Okay. Motion is second, discussion from the board? No? No? Okay.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Bowling,
Aye.
Susan Diver,
Aye.
Stacy Davis, Troy Scott,
Aye.
Rocky Enfield,
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye.
Close to the end of my time with you this evening. In 2011, the district entered into a number of agreements with Elkhart County regarding the use of our facility at that time for distribution of H1N1 vaccine. We're now in a time period where we may be called upon by the Department of Health to do that. Along with the county attorney, we have prepared a cooperation agreement, which really stands in place here during time periods when we might be called upon by the county to assist in those efforts by providing facilities for that. We're seeking your approval this evening, authorizing, in essence, me to enter into this agreement on behalf of our community schools. In addition to this agreement, there will be, should they actually call upon us to use any of our facilities, a separate document requesting and in fact actually having the ability to utilize those facilities, which would be Northside Gym, the health gym over here on the west campus, or facilities on the east campus. Any one of our buildings, we would actually at that point in time identify that building, and that's really a collaborative process between us and the county as to where we'd like to have these activities taking place. For example, right now, in the midst of basketball season, Northside Gym might not be the best location to do that. But in essence, it outlines a number of things that really weren't covered by the 2011 agreement. As you might recall, we did have an agreement with the county last spring related to the use of the Central Campus. We wanted to bring this to you to have a chance for you to review it before it was actually executed by the district.
So moved.
And we have a motion and second, discussion from the board?
Yeah, so if they come to us and say, we want to take over this facility, the board has the right to say no, yes or no.
That's not the question.
It's a board decision.
It would probably be an administrative decision, but if you felt as though we needed to bring the board to that, of course, that would then require a schedule meeting for that purpose. But actually, the district absolutely would have the right to say, no, you can't utilize that. The prior agreements, in essence, said that in 2011, hey, feel free to use Elkhart Central, Elkhart Memorial, with no question as to whether or not we could stay at that point in time. It's the wrong facility to use. So I think that's one of the improvements that stands in place in terms of this agreement. It also specifically deals with issues such as what are our requirements, our expectations in terms of security for that facility? What are our expectations of the county in terms of reimbursements for our costs in terms of utilizing that facility? So it really covered a lot of the details that were missing from the 2011 agreement.
What about the liability, delivery of medical and
Great question. Again, county would be responsible for and assume liability for any injuries that might be sustained while having guests at that particular facility on behalf of the county.
I'm assuming medical malpractice as well?
Yeah, because, what if somebody gets ill because of the COVID vaccination that is delivered at our facility? Are we gonna get drug into a lawsuit?
I can't guarantee you wouldn't get drug into a lawsuit, but what I can guarantee is that the agreement calls for the county to indemnify us for our legal fees we might incur at that time. Sadly, there's no way to guarantee we couldn't get sued. I'd love to have that agreement. But what matters to me more is if we enter an agreement such as this, that we're indemnified by them to come to work out.
Any other discussion?
Well, I think it's important that we do cooperate with, governmental agencies, we rely on each other, especially in times of great need. But, I think you did a good job of making sure that we are more protected than we were before, so.
The county has really been a good solid partner in terms of these. I appreciate their efforts to address concerns such as the ones that we're raising this evening.
Okay. Susan? Do we need to?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Boland,
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Stacy Davis. Aye. Troy Scott.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye.
Last item that I'm up here to talk to you about is a resolution of the Board of School Trustees addressing, the unfunded liabilities of the district in terms of contributions to various employee groups to our VIPA plan. As we discussed during the work session, we had some circumstances that we came across where employees were not receiving contributions that would mesh with what board policy provided for those various different employees. So we're seeking your authorization this evening to remedy that problem that existed for a number of years that was uncovered by our business department most recently. I would note that the proceeds to cover this cost will be coming from the bond that was issued to cover these costs back in 2006. So neither the operations fund or the education fund would be impacted by your approval of the resolution.
Okay. Motion?
Move approval?
Second.
And we have a motion and a second discussion from the board.
I'm glad this, is being resolved.
Mm-hmm. And explain how it's being resolved. Very critical tonight, so. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Doug Weaver,
Aye.
Babette Boland,
Aye.
Susan Diver.
Aye.
Stacy Davis. Troy Scott.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Okay.
The Dove Storm Show has been taken.
Then.
That's what I called it earlier.
You say,
I am happy to deal with
our statement is, take your cupcake and go.
Board members, I bring to you this evening consideration of a resolution for us to engage in a ballot question for 2021 for a referendum of collection dollars in 2022 to support transportation and operating costs to improve compensation for our staff. Because the transportation referendum of dollars that were begun in 2015, voted on in 2014, expires this year, it requires us to renew that portion of the referendum so that we can continue to have $4.9 million to support transportation, allowing us to keep all of our routes, keep bulk zones small, return hopefully to being able to offer field trips at some point, and allowing our bus drivers to be competitive with drivers around us in the area to keep our fleet going when many other districts are struggling to do so. As we do that, it seems the appropriate time for us to revisit the question of a referendum from 2019. The issues that we faced in 2019 of staff vacancies, teacher turnover, issues with teacher attraction and retention are all still there. No one has ridden in on a white horse to help us with funding. And even though there are questions about the Teachers Compensation Commission and recommendations from them about what to do, Elkhart Community Schools has already implemented most of those. And one of the recommendations in that committee report is to conduct a referendum. We have to do this in order to get ourselves competitive to districts around us, which have also passed referenda. So we would ask for a tax rate of 38.5 cents. 13.15 cents of that is already baked into property taxes currently in support of the transportation referendum. The remainder would help us generate $7.35 million and another $3 million so that we could increase compensation and make greater contributions to the employee health insurance benefit package. We have been conducting conversations since February, conducting an autopsy of the previous referendum, things that didn't go well. We've engaged in several stakeholder conversations. As many of you are aware, Mr. Scott, Mr. Thorne, and myself met with all employee groups in the fall, hearing their desires for what would happen with increased compensation. And we have been working with a political action committee with Mr. Matt Kruper as the chair over the past several months to get ourselves positioned for the rollout of this. It is with my strongest recommendation that I encourage the board to pass this resolution so that we can begin this process and move towards creating a stronger LCART.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion from the board.
Yeah. Nobody likes paying higher taxes. It's a fact of life. Part of the problem with taxes, it's hard to see value in it. This is a tax that has value. It has value for the entire community of Elkhart. It has a value for our kids today and generations to come. Now, the state has put us in a position where we have no choice but to ask for a referendum. And I want to remind everybody that this board does not hold the power to raise taxes. All we can do is ask the community to show us how much they value public education. And if there's anything we've seen in 2020, it is the importance of quality public education. Teachers, students, parents, everybody has struggled in this year, but we've struggled together. And if we want to make sure that Elkhart as a community succeeds in the future, we need to pass this referendum.
Thank you. Okay. Well said. Any other discussion from the board?
I've been working with Matt Kruper for a little while now, and I find him to be a great leader, and we are so happy that he stepped forward. Would you stand and be recognized? Thank you for your service.
Okay. Any other discussion?
And I think we'll see Stephanie Kroll and Matt on the news tonight. Here's Matt.
Excellent. Okay.
Ready for the vote?
Let's do it.
Doug Weaver.
Aye.
Babette Bowen.
Aye.
Susan Diver. Aye. Casey Davis. Aye. Troy Scott.
Aye.
Rocky Enfield.
Aye.
Kelly Mullen.
Aye. Okay. From the audience? Nothing. Do you quickly want to take a moment to at all say anything about your Facebook page and or did you do that on the news? Matt? Mm-hmm. He didn't fill out a white paper, so I'm going to do it for him.
We've been working really hard in support of this referendum.
Name?
Oh.
Address?
My name is Matt Kruper. My address is 1321 Greenleaf Boulevard, Elkhart, Indiana.
Excellent.
Anything else I need to do?
Debit cards on the table.
Mother's maiden name.
Mother's maiden name.
Introduce you so you were.
Security, no.
Now that I'm legal, we've been working over with the school board, with Steve, with the administration, over the past several weeks and months, to build out the Stronger Elkhart PAC in support of the referendum you all just passed, so thank you very much for that. Our social media and web page is www.strongerelkhart. Twitter, Stronger Elkhart, and we'll also have a Facebook page under Stronger Elkhart. So the more the community can support the referendum, and go out, and whether that's through funding, through volunteering your time, any treasure that you have will take your support. And that's where we're going to communicate mainly to the community about the details of the referendum. So you can find that at strongerelkhart.com.
Thank you.
Guys very much. Appreciate your passage.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. From the superintendent?
I have further.
Okay. From any of the boards?
I would like to thank Kelly Mullen for,
taking good care of us this last year. She took it upon herself to go above and beyond any president I've ever worked with. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I would second that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I pass this graciously over to Rocky. So, but I do want to say, for those that didn't know, and maybe you can touch on it, our Christmas program that happened where we received the money from the city, then we received the money from the police officers, and we were able to distribute gifts to our students throughout the whole school system, all ages, all the way down to infants, am I correct? So we received how much from the city? 15,000.
From the city.
And the police station,
Police station gets an additional
75?
75, yeah.
Yeah, 15,000 plus 7,500.
And there's more, and all those, donations will be recognized by donors at the next board meeting.
Excellent. But if you didn't have an opportunity to see, our staff was outstanding in purchasing, wrapping items, delivering items, the joy on our social workers, if ever a time that there was to see.
And volunteers.
And volunteers work together from our city, taking care of our students in the city and inside the county also. It was amazing to see. It was truly like little angels going across our community. It was wonderful. So that was something I thought was wonderful. And with that, I would say we are adjourned. Thank you.